please say the pledge with me. The flag is in the back. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Would you please take attendance?
Frost.
Here.
No. Here. Argual. Here. Gorson.
Here.
Moons. Here. Shang. Here. Weisberg.
Here.
We're all accounted for tonight.
Okay. Is there any correspondence?
I have no correspondence.
Okay. Before we get started, I have a couple of announcements I would like to make. We're going to change the agenda slightly this evening. And before I explain the change in the agenda, I just want to point out, we know we have a number of people here that want to make comments to the board, and we want to hear those comments. We want to get through all the comments. I know that it's a contentious issue right now about the executive orders and the guidance, but there are executive orders saying that we have to be masked that are not subject to the court order, and executive orders that are subject to the court order were not revoked by the judge in the case, so we're continuing to apply with the masking order. So I'm just going to ask people, please, I realize we may have differences of opinion, but please continue to keep your masks on during the meeting today, and we would appreciate it. That'll give us a chance to get to everybody's comments. If we have difficulty with that, we're not supposed to continue the meeting if we're not masked. So I just ask for everybody's indulgence this evening for our process. So having said that, what we'd like to do is give Nick the floor when we start. Give me a second, Nick, so that we can get the student activities report. A lot of neat things have happened recently that we want to hear about. And then just to help the people that are here that want to make public comments, we want to take this a little bit out of order from what was on the agenda and give you a small report where we'll talk about the ruling itself. We'll mention what the status of the executive orders is. We'll explain how we've responded to this, and when and how we hope these mitigations will slow down. After we explain our position, we'll open it up for public comment, and we'll talk about that process when we get to the public comment section. After public comment, that is the one section of the meeting where obviously the public can make comments. After that, we will then move on to some board member questions and discussion and go through the rest of our regular agenda. Okay? So with that, I'd like to give Nick the floor that he deserves so we can hear about things going on in the school.
Okay. First off, it's amazing to be back with all of you after a bit of an extended break from first semester. So kind of aligning with the change in the agenda for tonight, I also had a little bit of some changes to the presentation. So I'm just going to get some basic information out of the way first. So for student council, obviously we know that Winterfest week is coming up in the next couple of weeks at the end of February. So we are preparing for the dance and the assembly. So the theme for Winterfest is Into the Woods. That was a little bit of a change from our original jungle and safari theme. And both the dance and the assembly will be held in the Sports Center, which is a change from the field house previously. We also had Student Congress today, and then some of the other events that Student Council has done I'll get into later. And then for NHS, generals are happening this week, so we're electing the executive board for next year, and also they're preparing for the second blood drive of the year, as well as St. Baldrick's, which goes towards cancer. So to start off, this is a graphic that Dr. Eddy, one of the student activities directors, made. So on the x-axis you have kind of time and then excitement among the student body. So that dip before the little hump is kind of where we are right now in February. So essentially there's a little bit of a lull in the year, and there's low excitement among students. So this is kind of between winter and spring break. We're in the building less since we're kind of entering a period where we're only having 4 days of school a week, just because of Institute days and other holidays. Juniors are hard at work on standardized tests, and seniors kind of have one foot out the door. I even went through the planner. We have 63 days left of school, so everyone's kind of thinking about the end of the year and just kind of distracted from actually being engaged with the school community. So that's kind of why we have a dip. That's also why we have a bunch of super exciting events happening. So first up is Adlai's birthday. So we had a lot of cool and fun things happening on Friday, February 4th. So in the morning, beaded necklaces were handed out, as well as party hats, and temporary tattoos and some other fun things. And then these are all photos from lunch periods. So this was us setting up during third hour. So we had an ice skating rink in the Wood Commons, and then we have a bunch of skating students, which was super exciting. It was super packed in Wood Commons, so it's great to see high levels of engagement with that. And then we also passed out cake and cupcakes with Adlai pins. And there was definitely kind of a setup with Dr. E. Those temporary tattoos lasted for over a week. You can't get them off. We were all trying them on during third hour in the weeks before the event, and they stayed on forever. So this was a super fun way to kind of get everyone connected before Winterfest. And then next up. So we have Odyssey week. So I just want to touch on the freshman experience a little bit. So all advisories, we usually meet in just classrooms and go through activities. But this week, Monday through Wednesday, we were actually in the PAC, and there were a 15-minute preview of the events that were happening after school, which were at 4 p.m. in the PAC. So all advisories kind of got a preview. So we had Scott Green, we had Comedy Dance Chicago, which was super interesting. We also had some singer-songwriter information, and then on Thursday, we watched an LGBTQ+ film, which was super great for all students to kind of just learn a little bit more about the experience and kind of gain a different perspective. And then also, oh wait, can you go back?
Nope, sorry.
We're good. And then during lunch periods, kind of in the middle, we had other activities. So there was tape art, and then we also had some other performers like contortionists. And then also we had rotunda painting in the West Building, so the ceilings were painted with designs, and that was kind of the culmination of Odyssey Week. So definitely a super engaging week for all the fine arts. Okay, next up we have cultural events. So first up I want to touch on BAS, which is the Black Student Association here at Stevenson. So they had they're having a month full of collaborations with different clubs to celebrate Black History Month. So they're working with FIRE. This was actually last week, Thursday. They had an event in 2104 with matching the vision with the visionary, just kind of going through different social movements in the past and kind of gaining more education and knowledge about that. They also worked with Film Club, and they watched Hidden Figures and kind of discussed that movie, because that was definitely groundbreaking within the film industry. And then NHS, during one of the committee meetings, they're decorating the school, which you can kind of see on the bottom left. Lots of Black History Month pride throughout the school, and this is definitely a good movement forward from previous years where we had the Equity, Race, and Diversity Inclusion Week. So definitely continuing on the momentum from kind of the Black Lives Matter movement from May of 2020. And then we also had the Asian American Student Association. They hosted an event this past Saturday on February 12th in the East Commons. So this was Asian Night Market. So they had a bunch of different booths. It was kind of a mini World's Fair where they had a bunch of Asian countries represented. So there were food, dance, performances, and then also like some henna art. So this was super interesting and definitely had a big jump in engagement. I think there were over 600 participants and attendees that Saturday. So a super great event for that club. Okay, then just some quick student highlights like I always do. So for S Factor, this was at the end of January, I think. I went, it was a super fun event. So there were, I think, 13 contestants, and then there were 3 faculty judges that judged the first round, and I think 7 or 6 of the singers moved on. And then there was one winner, which was crowd voted at the end. So all proceeds went to Kiva Club, which gives microloans to entrepreneurs in third world countries. Then next up, we have Spirit Revolution, so Palms and Cheer showed out at state in Bloomington, and where they placed 3rd and 5th respectively. I watched Palms conference and sectional performance, and they were absolutely amazing. The season is so long, it's like the majority of the year, so I definitely respect all the athletes because it counts as 2 seasons. They put in so much hard work every single day after school. Tennis isn't nearly as long or much of a time commitment, so definitely comparatively much harder. And then also, speaking of spring sports, so a bunch of informational meetings happened in the past couple of weeks. I know tennis had theirs in the health room, so I think a lot of student athletes are getting excited for their spring season, and this is kind of a transitional moment for sports. Next up, we have chess team, so they placed 1st at their state competition. And then the last thing, band prep, so upperclassmen, so juniors and seniors are helping sophomores and freshmen with their band auditions. So I think it's definitely a stress-free environment for upperclassmen just to give advice without like the presence of a teacher and the kind of stress that comes with that. So that's super interesting. And then the last slide is just a bunch of pictures. So on the top left, we have S Factor, so the winner was Ashwini. Second place was Hiva, and 3rd place was Michelle Cabrera. And then we have Palms and Cheer here, and then the chess team in the bottom left. Any questions?
Excellent.
You got a question, Dave?
No, I'm just watching.
It was exciting to hear about the chess team.
Yes.
And
I was looking-
Congratulations.
Tina's son is on that team.
I was looking back at the Daily Digest, and I saw like the qualifying tournaments, and then I kept scrolling, and then there was like a picture of me for the informational tennis meeting. I was like, I did not see myself in the Daily Digest that day. So that was kind of a surprise. But that's about it.
Is that the first state championship for the
Chess team?
For the chess team?
No,
No?
no, we've had a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've been
Also,
in third
breakout.
last year.
They were 3rd last year, yeah. They were #1 seed going in.
Another breakout team was the girls' gymnastics. I think they had a bunch of state qualifiers for different divisions for the first time in I think like 10 years. One of my friends, Allie Gittler's on that team. So it was super exciting to see that success too.
We have wrestlers who qualified for state.
Yeah, I think there were 3. It was Lorenzo, Cole, and Jacob Whiting. So, lots of successes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
As always, you gave us a lot of information with good slides so we could visualize it in the future.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Okay, just to review, we're going to give a quick report then on the status of the ruling, and then we'll open up to public comment and then have further discussion about that. Okay, so the ruling, the lawsuit was filed by parents of students from about 146 school districts across Illinois. 146 are the defendants in the case. And interestingly enough, the lawsuit was filed last December. The judge issued a TRO on the 4th. And there were several things that were in the order that the judge issued. First, the plaintiffs tried to have the case classified as a class action. That was denied, and the effect of that is that essentially the TRO applies to the plaintiffs that are listed in the case, not all students in the district or all.
He's gonna have to speak loud.
I'm sorry. The effect of denying the class action status is that it applies to the plaintiffs in the suit, not all students in the districts or all school districts in the state. And it's interesting, if you look at the order the way it was written, the first 2 paragraphs of the order declared that the guidance that had been issued by the IDPH and the ISBE was null and void. And then the 3rd paragraph of the state said, of the order said that the defendants were restrained from enforcing the executive orders against the plaintiffs in the case. There are a couple of footnotes in the order where the judge basically says that non-parties should be aware of her conclusions that the guidance was invalid. And I guess if you're following this, the way the executive orders were issued, they granted the authority to the agencies to issue the guidance. And what the judge was saying was that the guidance that they issued was invalid. The judge never said in the order that the executive orders themselves were invalid. And that's a significant point to recognize. Okay, so where are we in terms of the status of the current orders? The orders that are issued under the emergency management, whatever the legislation is, are effective for 30 days. And so the judge has to extend those if they're to be, the governor has to extend those orders if they're to be effective. And on February 4th, the governor did extend the executive order that was the subject of the order by the judge. That now expires on March 5th. Okay, so what is Stevenson going to do? Well, I should start by saying we've received a variety of emails from parents in the district. We've received emails saying that they support that we continue masking and that we follow the executive order. We've received emails from some parents saying that we should not follow the orders because they're not supported by the science. We've gotten some other emails saying that we should find other counsel because we're following the advice of the counsel that we use. And we should do what other schools are doing. As you know, if you're following this, the judge's order inserted just chaos in the state. I have, there's a point that goes on here, I've talked to a number of lawyers. Eric and I and others have been on webinars with 800 to 1,000 people on them, seeing what lawyers are telling everybody. I've also called board members at different districts that are applying it differently, and it's just across the board in every district. It's just different. We will continue to listen to any kind of legal advice that we get from all of our law firms that have been all consistent, and we'll continue to speak to other schools to learn as much as we can about what's going on and how people are responding. As things happen, as we learn things, we'll modify and adjust the policies that we have. But the main point I think I want to make on the slide.
No.
I'm sorry, Dave?
No, just mumbling.
Okay. The main point that I want to emphasize on the slide is the judge did not say the executive order was invalid. The executive order instructs schools to follow the masking and granted the authority to the agencies to issue their guidance. There were two separate parts of the executive order. Whether the guidance is valid or not, under the rest of the order, we still are supposed to follow the masking requirements. And we're going to follow the rule of law. We'll follow the law whether we agree or disagree with that provision. There is a process, a rule of law to follow when you disagree with something. And the plaintiffs in the litigation are doing exactly what this country was designed to do and our rule of law was to do. If you disagree, seek to change the rule, go into court if you need to, with a proper way, but you don't just disregard the rule. Eric and I were talking and using the example when you file your tax returns, how many people in the room, if they don't agree with the tax law, still take a deduction that they know that they're not supposed to take? My guess is you don't do it, and you're definitely not going to do it and tell the public that you're doing it, which is what a lot of people are asking folks to do. The current executive order then is going to expire on March 5th. And how and when will the current mitigations end? We will know, apparently by rule, the appellate court is going to issue its ruling on or before the I've heard the 16th or the 17th, I'm not sure which it is. Basically, in another couple of days, we'll have something from the appellate court. What are the possible outcomes? They may affirm the TRO. We're hoping that they would provide clarification so that you don't have 900 school districts in the state all scrambling, trying to figure out different ways of responding to the TRO that was issued by the circuit court judge. They could say that the TRO is not effective. They could stay it until the court. There has been no hearings, no briefing on the issues, so they could say not do anything until there's actually a determination of law. And frankly, I've heard other things that the appellate court could do. They have a lot of remedies and authority to do things. So we have to wait, but within a couple of days, we'll find out.
So regardless, Stevenson was not part of the suit.
Yeah, a point to mention is that we were not a defendant in the suit. And so technically the TRO doesn't apply to us. We'll see how that plays out. Then I think is that. Okay, so that is the backdrop to what we're doing right now. We're gonna let people make their public comments. And obviously the folks who have comments this evening are free to say something about this, if that's what you're here for, or other items, if that's what you're here for. Our policy is that we give people 3 minutes to make their statement. And we'll ask people to please stay within the 3 minutes time period that we have. The other thing that we ask is, if you've heard someone make the specific point that you want to make, please, you don't need to repeat it. If you have something new to add, obviously get up and say what you want to say. And we've received emails and stuff. If you want to share anything with us by email, feel free to do that as well. I think we're going to ask. We have the. Okay.
Maybe just state what village they're from.
So we're going to start with Melanie Durrell. Is that the proper?
Yep.
And then.
Do I stand or just?
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with.
Do you actually have the slide that says how many school districts were named in the lawsuit? Was it 146?
146.
Okay.
And then just before you get started, when people get up, if you would just say, if I don't say it, so that Carrie has the information. I didn't mention that you're from Buffalo Grove.
I'm from Buffalo Grove.
So
Thank you.
I have a freshman at Stevenson, so I don't have that much experience in this school district. But for the 146 districts that were named in the lawsuit, between 400 and 500 districts have decided to go mask optional. So I don't think it matters if you were named or not. Some of the administrators in other districts are just handling it differently. I just want to address the letter that you sent after the protests, because I question it. Some students were verbally assaulted by parent and student protesters while entering and exiting. There were news choppers, one news chopper there all day. There was a TV van there all day. There were hundreds of cell phone videotape footage inside and outside. The only verbal assault I saw was either Channel 7 or Fox, I can send you the link, where a girl wearing a mask, a student, said, yeah, this mom told me I should remove my mask because I'm so beautiful. Ugh. I mean, is that verbal assault? Is that what you're accusing the people of? I did not see any verbal assault. You also state, we understand these events may cause feelings of anxiety or confusion among some students. They might want to speak to a trusted adult. Have you ever offered services from your student services division about the anxiety and confusion of the students who have been here for 2 years living under these conditions? Anxiety because they think that they're going to kill someone or themselves if they remove their mask, and confusion because we went to the wrong building and there's a basketball game and nobody has their mask on over there, but we come over here and we have to mask up all the way up here. There's a lot of anxiety and confusion to my student too. Finally, Winnetka Public Schools. Yes, they were named in the lawsuit. Effective February 7th, they didn't just limit it to the defendants named. School-wide, they said, we're done with this. And I just want to make a suggestion to the board that it was effective immediately. We will be a mask optional environment aligned with the temporary restraining order. They're giving guidance. They're saying we're trending in the right direction. With this past week's positivity rate at 0.5%, 70% student vax rate, this is what we're doing. We're asking you parents, reiterate safety. Remind students that we are safe in school with or without a mask. And be honest. Explain that the rules changed and that masks are no longer required. I hope moving forward, when you do decide to allow our kids to breathe freely, that you have a plan in place and a messaging in place. And speaking of that logo, you changed the logo. You put a mask on the logo after the protest. I don't see your mask on the Patriots logo up here. That is what some kids are claiming. They just noticed it after the protest, okay? This is getting political. It's got nothing to do with health or safety. It's like somebody just saying, no, we're gonna just stay masked until our last dying breath that we can have to stay masked, and it's getting really ridiculous. And you need to send a message to the community that when we do get to the point where there's gonna have to be choice, you're gonna have to allay the fears and the anxiety and the confusion of all the parents and all the students. Thank you, respectfully.
Okay, Hannah Smith?
On a delay.
Yeah, we have it's a slight delay. There are people in other rooms who are watching. They're seeing it a little bit after we are. And Hannah is from Long Grove, Terry.
Could you say your name, please?
Hannah Smith.
Yeah, from Long Grove?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Hannah Smith, 16 years old, and I'm ashamed to say that I'm a sophomore at this school. I attended the protest last Friday, along with many others, also sharing concerns for the disgusting and petty behavior that this school holds against all of the students here. A learning environment should be open to new and opposing ideas and should be willing to hear everybody out. From such a high-ranked school, you would think that they would accept differing ideas from anyone. But instead, going against our own human rights, the school has decided to handle it in an unprofessional and absurd manner. Only 90 protesters, the school states, and out of the population, it's only a fraction. Even if it was a single student or a single parent, this should not matter. The school claims to be all accepting, then why can't you accept the fact that I want a choice? They limit us, completely and utterly degrading our rights for this choice. Why is it that everywhere else, these mask mandates can be lifted, disregarding any number of crowds, but it is strictly applied to students here at this school? May I add, it is only applied to children in schools as opposed to any other public space. The moment I take a stand for my own choice, I am verbally degraded by many. What about my anxiety and my own mental health? Or is it because I am one student out of 4,185 that my own anxiety, mental health, concerns for my own safety, and the lack of choice simply does not matter? Did you ever think that dramatizing these events that took place last Friday would put a false label on me to the rest of my peers? Make them assume that I'm ill-intentioned when really I maintain the most respect for my peers' beliefs and choices. Why is it that I, at 16, can show simple respect and welcome these opposing beliefs that the leading adults of Stevenson cannot? Hear all cries, hear our anger, not only of these parents, but of these students too. This means all, not just the majority. The amendment comes first for a reason. Thank you.
The next one, Marie Frances Russell. And Marie is from Kildeer.
Marie, can you spell your last name?
My name is Marie-France Russell. I'm
sorry.
a product of World War II. My mother was French, my father was a GI. I'm here, I'm speaking ad hoc. With all love and respect, I'm actually paying it forward. My children graduated from Stevenson High School, and based on the opportunities that were provided, my youngest child will be celebrating her 10-year anniversary since coming to the school. But because of the opportunities that this school provided, they were accepted and graduated from world-renowned universities with degrees in engineering. And I guess I'm here as a blast from the past to implore you to get back to our roots. I hear talk of anxiety, I hear talk of fear. None of that was ever part of the education system here. And no one was ever made to feel bad. Education has become so politicized. And as a parent that was blessed to have children that were here, I think, in kind of a wonderful time to be at Stevenson, I'm imploring this Board of Education and the administrators to be free thinkers, to be brave, to teach our children to be brave. And I will say to that cause, I ask that you do make math optional. There's so much science coming out. We've learned so much in the two years. There's so much conflicting studies and research, but that's what learning, that's what education is all about. And I'm also asking you to please resist the horrible politicization of race and our history and our culture. It's very political. Not all of it is based in history, so please resist teaching our beautiful students that somehow they're guilty of something. They're not. And I will say thank you for what my children had, and I hope that it can get back to that. And all of this talk, which is so sad for me, of fear, anxiety, safe spaces, that you can get back to what really made Stevenson so wonderful for my children. Thank you.
Where was you from?
Kildeer.
Kildeer? Thank you.
Okay. Natalia Link, please.
I'm Vadim Linik, I'm Natalia's husband, so I decided to speak.
Okay.
And your name, sir?
Vadim Linik of Lake Forest. So really quickly about the rally last Friday, in regards with the letter of the principal and superintendent, when I read that there were verbal insults from the protesters, it's completely untrue. The only verbal insults were coming towards protesters from inside the school, okay? Everybody on the protest was super polite. So it's at the minimum is distortion of what happened. Now, what I have is, so even though there was only 100-something schools and districts that part of lawsuit, as of today, as of this morning, there were 549 schools and districts that made the mandate optional, masks optional. So obviously they interpret the ruling quite differently than you. So how can you explain that?
If you can, and I would listen to any lawyer's explanation.
Have you had any contacts?
I
with
think
other
it's just the school
districts?
making the decision. They're
Yeah,
not going
I
by
think
what a
the
lawyer
ruling
says.
gives you the power
Put your
of
mask
decision,
up.
at least while the TRO is in place, to make the masks optional.
You know, if you want, what I'd like to do is give folks, I don't want to use your time for this. I'm happy to talk to you later. Let's go through the public comments, because we're actually not supposed to have conversation. We're getting your comments and we'll respond
So, and
after.
the last thing I'd like to ask, what's gonna happen with the kids who are part of the suit while the TRO is pending? So are you gonna segregate them?
We don't have any parents in Stevenson that are part
Well,
of
you
this.
may, there is still option for
Oh, absolutely.
Right, so what's gonna happen if there are kids who are part of the suit?
We'll check with our lawyers and ask us what, I realize I'm supposed to not be having a conversation about this and listening to your comments. What I'm hearing is there are a variety of ways schools are replying to that. There are some schools that are treating the plaintiffs different than the other students. There are some schools that are deciding
Well, I
to just treat all the
understand,
kids
with
the
all due
same.
respect, I'm not interested what other schools are doing, but rather what this school is doing, because my kid is in this school.
Okay, we'll face that bridge. We got 3 days, we'll find something out. If we find out we're part of the suit within the 3 days, we'll have to reach a
So,
decision on
are you
it.
gonna reconvene after the TRO is affirmed?
We've been spending hours every day since the TRO came out, working on this, talking with each other, having conversations. Yes, we're gonna keep working on this.
Could you put your masks up, please? Cover your nose.
Thank you. Okay, Maria Bickers from, I'm not sure what area?
Kildeer. Hi, nice to see you. Had a couple kids already come through this district, and I gotta tell you, I'm pretty upset. My name is Maria Bickers, and on Friday's protest only further confirms to me the values of the Constitution of the United States are being stripped away. The politically left-leaning members of the society are destroying our children's family core values and positive character traits by removing their freedoms through the use of manipulating them into believing things are not true, causing them confusion with the result of teenage suicide, drug abuse, violence, mental illness that us parents in the end have to deal with. All because the education in this country is corrupt from left-leaning ideals. This explains the reason we encountered quite a few, vulgar, violent, mask-wearing, fight-provoking students. Me personally, 3 of them came up to me for some reason. I wasn't doing anything, but anyway, they behaved so badly, I was shocked that they even live in our community and even at our school. Culturally responsive teaching is the new title of critical race theory, which is the current teaching method educators are following under the direction of the Illinois State Board of Education. CRT teaches one race is inferior to another. And this angers me because in the last 60 years or so, we have come to a point in our society that we do not see race. We see our family, our friends, our coworkers, our fellow citizens. The Marxist teaching of CRT explains the vulgar and violent mask-wearing students that approached us on Friday. I sure hope these students attended your Zoom empathy seminar today. They truly needed it. Senate Bill 818 is a bill that passed regarding teaching sexuality at the early age of kindergarten. This teaches small children it's okay to masturbate, a subject that should never happen between a child and an adult. That is pedophilia. A child's sexuality is not the business of the educators. That is a private, natural experience children are to go through on their own at their own personal pace or growth. Sexuality in the high schools through graphic books are, again, something that students must learn at their own personal, private pace, not influenced by an educator. The luring of children to after-school clubs that promote the LGBTQ community should never happen in our schools. Teachers should never provide incentives or gifts to children to attend these clubs. That is grooming. This is currently happening in our schools, and parents are not aware of this. The LGBTQ clubs are supposed to be there for the emotional and friendship support of the LGBT children in our community, not to lure kids to the club with the intention of asking the child if they are sure if they are straight, which causes confusion. Causing a child to become confused with their sexuality causes mental illness. That, again, are caused by schools, which in the end parents have to deal with due to the teachers in the schools' poor judgment. This is happening all over the country to the point children are committing suicide because of this. These leftist ideals teachers are using to indoctrinate our children into the dangerous world of Marxism, and it needs to stop. Educators need to think critically before continuing to push this form of culturally responsive teaching, as they are only causing children to lose their constitutional rights, and most parents don't even realize it. We need to save this country, and we need to do it by teaching our children everyone's rights and freedoms matter and need to be upheld.
Okay. Again, if you could try and keep your comments to 3 minutes, we'd appreciate it. Dale McLean?
Sure.
Lincolnshire?
Sure. My name is Dale McLean. I have been a resident for about 20 years in Lincolnshire. My issue is a tax issue. It's a little technical, so I apologize. First, I want to acknowledge my appreciation for Steve and Sean meeting with me during December. I think it was helpful. That said, I continue to have taxpayer concerns the more I research Stevenson finances. Specifically, I am deeply disappointed in the lack of reciprocal trust and transparency between the taxpayer and the school board. I only have 3 minutes, so I'll be direct. Exactly 20 years ago this week, Stevenson was working on asking the taxpayer for a major increase in the maximum annual tax rate. On March 19th, 2002, the taxpayers approved the referendum and entrusted the school board with a nearly 34% increase in the rate. Doesn't sound like much, but this rate was spread out over a 5-year period from '02 to '06. And did it achieve its desired result? You bet it did. And then some. In that 5-year period, the maximum tax extension and the related tax levy by Stevenson more than doubled. So it went from 35 million in 2001 to 75 million in 2006. That's a $40 million increase in our taxes in a 5-year period. And granted, some of that was also increase in the equalized assessed value of homes here. But it also included the maximum tax increase that's allowed by law that Stevenson High School has been taking every year, and for at least the last 20 years that I found. So do you think it was a coincidence that Stevenson started generating huge surpluses in 2006? I don't think so. For the next 13 years, Stevenson generated annual surpluses averaging 9.7 million a year for 13 years in a row. Once those, and they got socked away into the surplus. Once those huge annual surpluses became known, did Stevenson reciprocate the trust generated by the voters when they gave them the major increase in taxes and start to reduce the tax assessment? The answer is no. In fact, the operating surplus continued to grow until it reached $144 million at the end of 2018. And at that point, the board decided to spend it on expansion that for 500 to 600 new students that aren't even here today. And it's debatable whether they'll be here. We'll see, time will tell. And what I'm concerned with is the inflation rate right now is 7.5%. Stevenson has always taken the maximum increase. I would encourage the board to, going forward, to consider throttling that back. What am I suggesting? At this point, the money's spent. You spent over 80 million on the new expansion, the new second indoor track. If that went to referendum, I'm not sure it would pass. But my recommendations, I just ran out of time. My recommendations are the same 3 that I presented at the October 18th board meeting. Essentially, reciprocate the voters' trust by lowering the annual cap taxes. They gave you their trust 20 years ago. I think it was violated. Accumulating that money was not transparent. Secondly, don't pass the full 7.5% inflation. I know that won't come up for budget for another year or 2. But, and then lastly, stop using the working cash loophole to generate funds to avoid taxpayer referendum. Thank you.
Barb Fulford. Barb is in Vernon Hills.
Barbara, what's your last name?
Tolbert, T-O-L-B-E-R-T.
And where are you from?
Vernon Hills.
Pardon me?
Vernon
Hills? Thank you.
So I also want to talk about taxes, as Dale McLean has, but I do want to start with to introduce myself. Last year, I ran for the District 125 School Board, and we ran on a purpose of bringing more accountability and transparency to the district in terms of what's going on inside the school, and as well as taxes and the things that we as district members should know. We are part of the system, and yet I felt, and the running mate that I had also felt, that we were really kept outside in terms of understanding what was going on. So after you prevailed, I congratulated you because we ran against each other, and there's a winner and there's someone who doesn't win, and that was myself and my running mate. And Ms. Frost, you had assured us that you would be more transparent and that you would involve the community more and that you would make sure that people understood what was going on, especially financially. This is so critical. There's so much money being spent. This is a big school. It takes a lot already out of us, and there was more to come. So now go to November, fast forward from April, when we talked about working together and making sure that we could really have better communication. In November of this year, some of you may know that the board unanimously voted to approve a $17 million working cash bond. That is new. That is really not anything that Dale addressed, although he alluded to that. That was done without much input. I don't think it was done with any input from the community. Our group that ran Act Now actually assembled a factual and comprehensive packet of information for people to understand. I know, Mr. Frost, that you had said to people, or you had put it in writing, that this would not impact the taxpayer. The reality is, and I ask all of you to do your homework and your research, the reality is if that $17 million bond had not been approved by this board, then we may have, after the other working cash bonds were paid off, we may have seen a $5 million reduction in our property taxes. That is significant. The fact that it was approved, we will actually, not anytime real soon, but 2027 is coming sooner than we all think, we will be paying more taxes. I would implore you to please provide the information that Act Now provided. That really should come from this board. That's the way you engage your community. That's the way that you make sure that people understand what's going on. The board is very, very smart, and we know that you can do all these things to help everyone in your community. There's a lot of turmoil right now. A lot of people are concerned about what's going on with their kids, but the commonality that we all have is every one of us is a taxpayer. So I implore you, Mr. Frost, as the board president, to please, we shouldn't be begging. There were, and I want you to know that quite a few voices were heard in December. So in November, when this happened, there were people that attempted to get signatures for a petition to make that decision go to referendum. Unfortunately, it was the holidays. We needed 5,000 signatures. It was too burdensome. So I ask you, please, ensure that you communicate with people. There should never be another dollar approved either without input from the community or without it going to referendum, so you know what the constituents want. Thank you.
Amy Eaton? We have your village, Amy, if you could just share where you live.
And what's your name, please?
Amy Gayton.
Can you spell your last name?
Gayton. We're not supposed to converse, so I'm just going to presume that none of you have ever heard of an industrial hygienist. They're the ones who study masks. These don't work.
You need to keep your mask on.
Can't talk with it on.
You all are.
These things don't work. The only one that does, even the K95 doesn't even work. There is one that does. And if everybody had to wear it, nobody would wear them anymore. They work one way, so they protect the user, They do not protect the other people. To make it two-way, you would not be able to breathe. But you know what? We can't breathe in these things anyways. This is child abuse, and you guys are abusing all of our children.
Okay, is it Gregory and Kim, or do both of you want to talk, or one of you?
No, it's just me.
So it's Kim, is it Abshore?
Abshire, A-B-S-H-I-R-E.
From Long Grove.
And your first name?
Kim,
Thank you.
so I'm Kim Abshire. My son is Gregory. He's, anybody that knows him in this school, granted he's only a freshman, anybody knows that Gregory's a well-behaved, well-mannered, very respectful child. And it's just because we raise my children to be respectful citizens in this community. They're respectful to their peers, they accept differences, they look out for differences in other students, and they grow on those acceptances of these differences in their community. In the events in the past week, it's been a completely different experience. The backlash that my son has received and has been socially acceptable is quite frankly disgusting. My husband and I and a few of our generations within both of our families are Stevenson alumni. So naturally, we wanted our children to attend Stevenson. Being a parent of a Stevenson student in this school, I now see things in a whole new light. It saddens me to see how much this administration has changed over the years. I remember when I was a student in this school, and the school cared about students rather than the social status and ranking. The events of this past week have really opened my eyes to that. You boast your vision and your mission towards acceptance, inclusion, equality for all, but you don't live by your own values. You state that you uphold yourselves to you state you will hold yourselves accountable to a vision and various commitments. I won't read them all, but I am going to state two. Your vision. At SHS, we practice inclusion with intention by enhancing our collective cultural competence, centering the voices and experiences of all groups of stakeholders, removing all systemic barriers for full student access in curricular and co-curricular planning, and dismantling systems that perpetuate inequities. The commitments, I won't go through them all, but one particularly really stands out to me. We amplify voices of students and families. We are committed to working tirelessly to fully engage our students and families as advocates for their children. We work to find multiple ways to amplify voices of our students and respond to their diverse needs. But your behaviors, your actions, your leadership demonstrate that these only apply if the topic agrees with your government-funded agenda, your racial differences, or to causes that support the LGBTQ community. The exaggerated letter that you sent out to parents on Friday has done nothing but create a larger social segregation among the students and families in this community. Your letter stated, we witnessed parents and students banging on the windows by the point entrance, but this has actually consisted of one parent who briefly knocked on a window and that was instantly stopped by the parent protesters with a reminder to keep things peaceful and stay away from the building. As for students pounding on the windows, you made no mention that there were students inside pounding on the windows, as well as students on the outside of one door knocking to be let in while you stood there with smiles on your faces. There are hundreds of videos proving these actions. Your letter also stated that students were verbally assaulted by parents and student protesters, but you did not mention that the students exiting the building during those passing periods came up to parents using foul language, putting their middle fingers up in parents' faces, and physically grabbing a device out of a parent protester's hands and intentionally breaking it. None of these students or parents standing outside engaged in name-calling or any physical contact. The 9 police officers, along with the Stevenson security and faculty that lined the sidewalk and the drive in front of the point, would have addressed that behavior. You all know it. Because you don't live by your own principles, you demonstrated to your student body that it's okay to verbally harass my son while sitting in class, while walking through the halls, and on social media. He has been told that he should crawl in a hole and die. He has been called a racist and many other unacceptable comments, many of which I refuse to even have come out of my mouth as an adult. My son can play the emotional anguish card too, just like all the rest of these poor students in your email. There is a public group on social media that is publicly shaming students who aren't wearing their masks. And it's all public. It's sitting below their noses, or you see them without a mask on. You all turn a blind eye to this, and I don't want to hear that. Not a single one of you know this exists. So what is truly the point of forcing students to wear a mask when they aren't even being worn appropriately? This last week, all my son asked for was that the administration listen to all facts from all resources and allow students to have the choice that you say you allow them to have, and like other schools in the surrounding areas. Instead, you laughed at him and the rest of the students and tried to politely have a conversation with you outside. You laughed at their thoughts and their opinions. Unless action is taken to reduce social segregation in this school, all you're teaching these students is that in the face of many and complex challenges in the future, instead of asking how can we solve this together, your students and community will ask who can we blame. The hate amongst this community and the students in this school, when one person disagrees with something that they don't agree with, it's disgusting and it's breeding hate into these children. Above all of this, out of every negative piece of garbage that we've experienced in this last week, my children are learning one thing, the kind of person that they never want to be. Thank you for that.
I can't, is it Viril Wadham?
Thank you. I'll spell it for you. It's K-I-R-I-L-L is the first name. K-V-A-T-E-R-M-A-N is the last name.
In your village?
Vernon Hills.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking this time. I came in with a whole lot of what I thought relevant facts, important information, and thanks to these wonderful parents that I happened to get to know recently, and especially these wonderful kids, they already said everything. So I'm going to take a little different approach now, completely non-prepared per se. I moved to this country from a Soviet Union that I'm sure you young folks probably knew as you were growing up and learned what it is that you never wanted to experience, what it is you never wanted to see in this country happen. I moved here, we worked hard, and when I finally got a family, I moved to this wonderful area that I was told had the best schooling, had the best of everything for kids to grow up in. Yes, it's more expensive than a lot of other areas, but it was worth it. And I'll tell you a few of my experiences in the last few years. During this COVID time, I got to listen to what my children got to learn on Zoom, because I happen to have the kind of job that I got to be there with them, luckily. When I heard what I thought would have been history or social studies, I heard a lot of different version. I did grow up here, I moved here young, and when I went to school, we got a general topic, and we researched it from whichever direction we wanted, and as long as we had something to back it up, the teachers would grade it based on whatever, and you got to conversate with your other peers about that topic. It no longer is that. You are teaching them a certain opinion, that when they're reading it, there's no other opinion to get. As a concerned parent, I called a teacher. She said, it's not up to me. I called the principal. We had a lengthy conversation back and forth. He told me that he would Google, is CNN 10 biased? When he did, he gave me an article written by a CNN employee. When I told him, I didn't realize that this is now an acceptable way of proving your point, because in my school they never accepted that. He said you have two options. A principal who is 56 years old told me my two options are, you can homeschool your child, or you can go to a private school. I said, really? I pay taxes in this area to go to a wonderful public school that gets a 9 out of 10 on their rankings. But now you're telling me because I disagree with the way you're teaching that I can take my kid and go somewhere else and pay there. I don't think that's appropriate. I'll say one more thing. History repeats itself, and we need to learn from history. In the country I come from, when you had a difference of opinion, you disappeared easily, especially back in the old days. My grandparents, my great-parents, they may have been even killed. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here. But you're saying that these mandates, which if you look up a mandate, all it is a recommendation. These executive orders, which is honestly was a health crisis that only had a limited time. And now you don't have to follow that. So you sit here blindly and are accepting what is called a mandate or an executive order when you actually have a choice to make one way or the other. During World War II, there's a very famous expression that I love to live by. First, they came for the Jews, and I didn't do anything. Then they came for the Negroes and the cripples, and I didn't do anything. Then they came for somebody else, I didn't do anything. Then they came for me, and there was nobody else left to do. Don't wait for other people to make decisions. Stand up, be adults, and make a decision. Let this be a country of choice where I came here to make choices. Rich, poor, where to go to school, what to study, what to believe, religion, politics, separation of state and church. Keep the school open for kids to make choices and learn whichever side and make their own decisions. Thank you.
Okay, I think that is all?
On the list, but
Yeah, that's the people that have signed up on the list. Is there anyone else, either in this room or in another room, that would like to make a comment?
Can I just ask a question? There's people over there and there's people here. And I'm wondering, with a school this size, massive, 1 million square feet plus, why, I know you said social distancing, but we could be in a bigger, much bigger room. I think it's inappropriate to have people separated, it's intimidating. I would ask, please, that you unify these board meetings and have everyone that would like to attend together.
Okay, we were limited because we announced the meeting in this room. We actually couldn't change it without delaying the meeting. And we didn't know when we had, by law, when we had to announce the meeting, we didn't know, this is very unusual, and normally this room is much more than adequate for the folks in it. So it really is.
I think you have to anticipate and accommodate. I think going forward, now you know the community really wants to talk to you. We know we can't talk with you unless we do that separately, but I think just anticipate and accommodate, because it's a way to unify this group of people.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there's no other.
You know what, I just want to say something. So, I have 2 children
Do me a
here.
favor, would you mention your name?
Sure, sorry,
please?
my name is Louise Traficante and I'm from Lincolnshire. And I have 2 children that go here, and you know, your motto is success for every student. And you are leaders, and you're leaders in education, and your job is to create the leaders of our society. I mean, that's what you're doing here. And I do feel like this is the time where you need to take a stand as a board, as a school, and you need to do the best for our kids. And I think you need to be free thinkers. I think you need to say, yes, we're good. We had a pandemic. I understand you reacted. We are in a different situation today. We have so few cases. Currently, you know, the CDC say, listen, it's 5 days. So let's be realistic. That's kind of like a cold or a flu. I mean, children in that age group of like 20 and under, really, there were like really minimal deaths within the US, like we're talking single digits. So to do this for such an extended period of time, for teenagers, when integrating, socializing, finding their peers, understanding who they are, understanding their identity is such an important thing. Why do you do this to children and have them not see one another's faces, to not express their opinion in school, to not engage with the teacher? Like, we are an open society, we can communicate, we can do this. You are leaders. I respect your opinion, Mr. Frost, and I know you're a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. But you have a choice. You can do this. It's so simple. You guys can do this. I mean, lots of schools are doing it. Vernon Hills, Libertyville, Lake Forest. It's
Grace Lake, Barrington.
Grace Lake, I mean Barrington, and it's mask optional. So we're not upsetting everybody. It is your decision. So as a parent, if you're worried, your child can still wear a mask. As a child, if I'm worried, but I kind of agree with everybody. I think the longer you keep this up, the more divisive it's going to be. You see the results here. A student is not able to comfortably stand up and object and say what they think and feel. And I do think you need to be very cognizant of the fact that for a student to be brave enough to get out there and take a stand is something you should encourage and you should advocate for. And I feel like these are young adults, these are our future leaders. Please respect their opinion. Please let them have the option to wear masks or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, I would like to say something. I did notice that the entire time everyone was talking, Mr. Treadwell, or however you say your name, Eric, you are just being rude. I know you're busy.
No, I'm taking notes on what people are saying.
So you
Yep.
are
Yep.
taking
We're
notes?
taking
Okay, I
notes.
just wanna make sure you're
Pages of
taking notes
notes.
for
Yep.
us, because
Yep.
this is important. And sometimes when we're talking to people who we elect into these positions, remember that, everybody, we elect them. They're up in 4 years. They have time to fix this mess, or we are walking and we're talking, okay? That's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
We're up here taking notes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on.
I forgot one thing. I'm gonna be sending you guys a link. It is, a guy compiled 150 studies and articles that show that not only do these not work, they are so harmful, ridiculously harmful. That's where the abuse comments came, well, other things too. But I'm going to be sending you that link, and there are 0 studies that show that they work. I know that there are 2 that are supposedly put out there saying that they work. One does not have a control group, and I don't remember why the other one is to be disregarded, but it is to be disregarded.
Okay, thank you.
The rest of the agenda?
So we're gonna move on now to the rest of our board meeting. I wanna thank you for your comments, and have a good evening.
You want to just take 2 minutes?
Yeah, let's take a 2-minute break. We'll give folks a chance to.
You're on the screen there.
Absolutely. So 2 things. We will have our Ambassador Award. We continue to have scheduling conflicts with this poor student, but hopefully next month. And then in addition, it sounds like we'll have some Ambassador Awards for our chess team, so that'll be exciting as well. So we're looking forward to that. We'll also resume our curriculum team presentations next month. We will also be presenting you with our recommendations for textbooks. Tonight, as you can see, we are offering a first reading for our textbook recommendations. And if you just give me I thought I was ready to go and then I dropped the ball. If you'd like to review, you should be able to see an attachment. Yep, there it is. That has the textbooks that Mark and the curriculum directors worked through as recommendations for next year. As you know, a lot of the books have moved online. There are still some that are hardcover, sometimes in world languages, sometimes in AP courses. But you can see those books there for the 2022-2023 school year. And Sean, I would say that the total cost and expenditure is right around where it typically is on a year-to-year basis. Correct. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're presenting that to you tonight for your review. And then if you're at all interested, by law, Mark, we actually do have copies of all these textbooks over here in Mark's office for you to review if you were inclined to do that. Okay? You can see the Human Resources Report. Notably, we're excited tonight to be presenting to you Dr. Lori Feinzimmer as being recommended for our next Director of Social Emotional Learning. So we had a pool of over 100 candidates, Mark, and one of our very own kind of stood out and really impressed the team that was interviewing, and we're excited for Lori to take on that role and responsibility. And at the same time, not enough thanks can go Molly's way. She's been a great addition to the Stevenson team for these past 4 years, and we wish her nothing but the best of luck as she goes out east to finish up her doctorate at the University of Pennsylvania. So I think she'll be writing her dissertation over the next couple of years. So kudos to Molly as well.
Has she left already?
No, this summer.
Oh, this summer.
This summer. So that'll be presented as part of the consent agenda, and then we will not need an executive session following the meeting. And that takes us to the business section and our student transportation services bid.
Correct, thank you. So as you know, we have had shared services with districts 96 and 102 as it relates to busing. And as each of the districts has gotten larger and bell times have changed, it's become harder and harder to manage all of the fleets together under one contract. So as the board is aware, we did go out to bid. We sent out, we had 4 different requests. We had 2 different bidders submit a bid for Student and Safeway. We compared the bids not only on price, but also on other services that they offer, such as do they offer electric vehicles that is more sustainable than the diesel fuels? Do they have technology solutions to address, where is the bus type of a thing? They have do they have rewards programs to incentivize drivers to stick with the company and to have good attendance and good training so that, they're equipped to handle any issues. So we combed through the different bids, and we are recommending to the board tonight that First Student we retain First Student as our transportation provider. The main difference being is that we will have dedicated routes ourselves. So that means that we won't be sharing routes with 102 or with 96 unless we, Stevenson, believe that there's not going to be any interference in terms of getting our students here on time or to home at an appropriate time. If you looked at their bid comparison, when you take into account just looking at diesel buses, they are actually the lowest bidder, and they are actually under the inflation at this point in time. And then they also locked in price increases for the next 2 years as well. And those price increases reflect any labor contracts that have to be adjusted. We are basically locked in so that if there's any disruption and driver prices go up, that's already taken care of, and we won't see any escalators as a result of any kind of labor negotiations. So tonight we are recommending that the Board of Education award the bid for student transportation to First Student for the 2022-23, 23-24, and 24-25 school years as a cost outlined in their proposal. And we are also recommending that we include the alternate use for electric vehicles. It is a slow increase. It's not a full, we're going to go all the way to electric vehicles. It's a slow ramp up. I believe we start with 8 buses the first year, add 7 more the second year, and then 2 more the third year.
Can I have a motion before we have questions?
Slow move.
Second.
Any questions for Sean?
So, okay. I feel like we have this conversation every year. You know what I'm gonna ask you? What assurances are they giving us that we're not gonna have these issues? You know, we were talking about traffic earlier. If
Correct.
kids won't take the bus because it's unreliable, we can't fix the traffic.
So our bus ridership is up this year. We've seen an increase in bus ridership.
In fact, isn't it as high as it's ever been?
It is, at least as long as I've been tracking it, how about that? So that's been the last 7 to 8 years. I think my response is yes, can I guarantee you 100%? No. Do we have penalty clauses in there so that if they are not on time, that we either pay a lesser cost or no cost at all on the route? Yes. Do we believe that dedicated routes are going to help with our on-time status? The answer is definitely yes. Because now we are not at the mercy of another route that's being picked up and dropped off. And if that route is delayed, it doesn't have an effect on our route. So I do believe that they're going to be on, you're going to see better performance. We have seen better performance from First Student this year. And even last year when we changed the bus routes on them 4 different times throughout the year because we were hybrid, not hybrid, so. Outside of that, I don't know that I can give you 100% assurance. I'm sorry.
I know there's driver shortages and whatnot. Is it gonna get worse? If we separate from 96 and 102 and try to have more routes, is that better or worse?
That's a great question. 90s. Sorry.
God bless.
Because we're dedicated, they have a responsibility now to meet all of our needs. 102 is also going out to bid. I don't know if First Student will bid that. And 96 hasn't told us if they're going out to bid or what they're actually doing yet. But those are conversations that I have had with First Student. And I said, our anticipation is that we have a dedicated group of drivers that utilize our needs.
Right.
And that's correct.
And they're, okay.
Sean, is there an incentive for using more electric vehicles? Like, is there some program where we get some kind of reimbursement or something?
I haven't looked at the state reimbursement. I don't know that they have anything. What it better addresses is the sustainability practices that we have as part of our board policy, as well as the idea of idling buses sitting around our campus, creating, exhaust that is, not easy.
I understand that, but I think we should look into the
Financial incentives.
financial
Sure.
incentives.
Is it actually more expensive within the contract itself?
It is.
Yeah. How much?
How much?
It's a $50 increase per route.
So in real
route
numbers,
per
what
day.
are we talking about?
I put it in here, I don't remember.
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite.
No, it's all
see
good.
that.
It is, it would be an additional, basically about $192,000 in the first year.
And after that, it's
Right, and then it's pretty flat at 2. It's basically about $200,000.
every year,
Yes,
just to be electric.
correct.
So we are funding,
So we're
Not the whole fleet.
we are funding their purchases of electric
Well,
buses?
8 electric buses or whatever that
8
number
to
you
7,
mentioned.
so it'll be 17 all day. And those are buses that if we continue,
They're dedicated to
they're
us.
dedicated to us.
Do we have a choice as to whether we want to go ahead and deploy those or not? Or is
Yeah,
that
we
part of
can,
the deal?
no, we can, my recommendation is that we do it, but we can certainly just stick with diesel, absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's the other part of my question. Is their fleet, the rest of the fleet diesel, or do they
It
have
is.
some propane buses or
No,
any
they-
other alternative, natural gas or anything?
Just diesel and electric, what was presented to us. I can ask if they have other alternatives, but what was presented to us in the bid is either diesel or electric.
I'm just a little bit uncomfortable with funding their acquisition of electric.
I understand that.
vehicles.
The
But again,
typical bus life is.
They're dedicated to us.
Correct.
But we don't own them, right? They own them.
I'm sorry,
It is an extra $200,000.
that's my point.
Yep, it is.
It is.
A lot of money just to save
feeling is-
electric.
Yes.
I mean, these kids are still gonna come to school one way or the other.
I think our feeling was, this is something that we put in the bid as kind of like an alternate, right? And you know,
Well, it's great
we wanted to see the
information.
price,
Yeah.
you know, and our feeling was, you know, somebody's gotta start, you know what I mean?
Well, it's gonna
Like,
be a matter of timing is kind of the way I look at it. I don't know.
not if
Maybe it's
nobody,
okay, maybe it's not, I don't know.
not if anybody doesn't purchase them,
No, I get it.
right? So, I mean, that was our thought, you know, but
I mean,
it's frustrating that it's expensive as.
our savings will be in diesel, obviously, but there's no markup on electrical
Does
costs.
this cost include the gas, is gas separate?
No.
Okay, so it is a $200,000 additional cost for the electric.
Then that's a flat cost, I mean, who's paying for the?
The electrical
The
upcharge,
electricity,
that's built into this spread, is my guess. Or else, we're not paying an upcharge, there's no upcharge in it,
Yeah,
so it
that's
has to
why
be
the
built
question
in.
is, it's not like there's a fuel cost.
Correct.
Of some kind.
I mean, there should be savings, fuel savings, right?
But they probably factor
It's gotta be
Cost
that
less.
the buses cost more, and
Correct.
we're saving fuel, and the net
The net is 200,000
200,000 a year.
Because a typical bus, you know, a typical bus can be anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 per bus, when it's a diesel bus.
what's the difference in this contract versus what we're paying now without the dedicated? Did you say it was a couple $1 million a year?
The upcharge, like what are we paying more? The increase
How much
is,
more will we pay now for the?
it's about, if we didn't do the electric, it's about a 6%, let me do the comparison, I can tell you here, hold on, give me a sec. So our upcharge is, what's the difference there? It's about $300,000 more than what we're spending this year.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be hundreds, I mean, a million.
We thought that they came aggressive,
They want the business.
they came aggressive at us.
They don't wanna lose the business.
So we're
looking at a 14% increase in our price.
So we're getting
Over how much?
basically a dedicated set of buses now that we did not have before.
And
for the
drivers.
14
And drivers.
That's correct.
It's a good deal.
It does, and just to the point that Hina and Gary are making, if we approve the contract, let's just say we didn't wanna spend the money for the electric this year.
Mhm.
Cause
Do we
maybe
add
the
it later?
prices come down, or what incentives, did the infrastructure bill have a lot of incentives for the electric?
I thought they had something for school buses and
Yeah,
stuff.
I would.
I would just explore it, you know?
Okay, I mean, we certainly, I think, Steve, to where you're getting, is if the board decided to just negotiate or accept the contract for diesel, and we wanted to explore electric vehicles, let's say in 2 years, like year 2 of the contract, I'm sure they would be open to discussing what the upcharge would be for that, for sure.
Yeah,
If nothing
and let's
else, we do have, this is a 3-year deal with 2 one-year extensions if we desire, and during those extensions, we would then negotiate those prices. And at best, or at the longest, that's when we could add them as well.
Why can't we negotiate a contract that has an option for us to add the electric vehicles during the contract while we explore the financial incentives?
Well, we can explore the financial incentives, the problem is that this is a bid. So they put forth a price for them to conduct service based on the specifications that we provided to them. To change the specifications in the middle of a contract wouldn't be within the spirit of a contract. Now, we could try if both parties agree, but we just have to be very careful of the bidding laws, and I would have to check with our attorneys to make sure that we're not operating outside of the scope of bidding laws.
So the way it stands now, we can choose one or the other. We can just
You can-
approve it with or without the
We can
electric?
approve it, right, we can approve the contract and then also approve the electric component or the electric alternate if we desire.
Or we can just bid the electric piece separately next year or something, if we want? Like as an add-on?
Next time it's up, I can't.
We're not bidding next year, it's,
We won't bid for 3 years.
We won't have to approve it again for 3 years.
Correct.
We're not, you know, look, for $200,000 a year, we're not, you know, we're not gonna sit here and, tell you that it's something we have to do.
Right.
It's a little more than we thought it would be. Our feeling is that at some point, somebody has to start making the move, and our hope was that over the course of this contract and maybe one or two more, we could have a fleet of electric and start pushing the needle, but, we also understand that it takes resources to do that. We just didn't think it was gonna be this much.
Listen, the infrastructure bill, as I understand it, has a phase-in period over several years, so we can certainly explore those options, and then when we get to year 4, if we want, let's just hypothetically say that we get through the 3 years and the service is where we expect it to be, and we want to renew for a 4th year, I know for a fact we can add the electric vehicles at that point.
Let me kind of summarize where I think we're at.
Sure.
The motion that was made is to approve the contract with the electric vehicles.
Correct.
And we're not sure right now if we could approve the contract without the electric vehicles.
No, we can approve the contract without the electric vehicles. The electric vehicles were an alternate. So we don't have to accept that. Our initial recommendation is that we do, but the board can certainly just accept the bid as a diesel.
And we don't know right now if, there's 2 options that seem to be coming here.
Mm-hmm.
One is to explore financing and grants and whatnot before we do the electric initially.
Mm-hmm.
The other would be, until that's all figured out, we just accept the diesel for year 1 and year 2, maybe ask for this as
Correct.
part of this?
Yes, correct.
And the question there is whether that meets the bidding process.
Correct.
That's what we should do. You should
That's
accept the
correct.
bid without
That's what
the
I
diesel.
would
So we should
recommend.
accept it without the diesel and see if it's.
Sorry, without the electric.
Without the electric, excuse me.
Hearing the conversation, I think our recommendation is that the motion should be amended to approve the contract as presented and not accept the electric alternative at this point in time, but to further investigate financial incentives associated with an electric vehicle fleet.
Is
It's
that
beginning to sound a lot like an MOU.
we have a section tonight, Dave, on MOUs that we're gonna get to for you.
Here we go.
All right, so the motion is, everybody heard it? We don't need to repeat it
I
again?
think that's the
Okay.
sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we need.
Okay, can I, we have a motion, we have an adjusted motion. Terry, I think we're ready for,
Okay, are we ready? No.
Aye.
Agua.
Aye.
Gorson.
Aye.
Moon's aye. Shang.
Aye.
Weisberg.
Aye.
Thank you. Frost.
aye.
The motion carries 7-0 to approve the transportation bid without the electric alternative.
Thank you.
Welcome.
As we discussed at our site facilities meetings, Gilbane did conduct a bid on our behalf for the summer 22 projects that were identified, those renovation and maintenance projects that were in fact identified. The bids did come in better than expected. As we talked about, we were bracing for a higher bid results due to labor shortage and material supply distribution issues. But we were pleasantly surprised. All the bids came in under our initial proposal. So tonight we are recommending that the Board of Education award the contracts as presented, including the alternatives for the perimeter lighting and the code blue stations at a cost not to exceed $4,651,393.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Sean? And that 4,651 is the 4,392 plus the 3 other
items listed below.
And then you've shown the already approved to get to the total that we were talking.
That is correct.
Okay. And we did talk about this at same facilities. Are there any more questions for Sean?
How does it compare to what we budgeted for this?
It is under budget, about $500,000 under our budget.
So about 10% less.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
Yep.
On the technology package, Sean, does that include any hardware, or is that just like cabling costs?
No, it does include hardware if necessary in those areas. I'm trying to think where there's some light hardware, certainly like wireless
Yeah,
access
APs and
points.
stuff,
Yeah, nothing, super huge like servers or firewalls.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Okay, no more questions, would you poll the board?
Okay, Agwal.
Aye.
Gorson.
Aye.
Moon's aye. Shank.
Aye.
Weisberg.
Aye.
Thank you. Frost.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
7-0, we approved the summer 2022 project bids.
Last action item I have tonight for the board is on last Thursday, February 10th. We did close on the sale of our working cash bonds. The final component of this process is in fact the transfer of, or the abatement of the working cash bonds or the bond proceeds from the working cash fund and transferring it to the operations and maintenance fund, which then transfers it to the capital projects fund to fund for the process of finalizing the payment for our East Building Phase 2 project. So following any discussion, we are recommending that the Board of Education approve the resolution abating $17,003,067.51 and the subsequent transfer to the capital projects fund.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions? Would you poll the board, please?
Certainly. Gorson.
Aye.
Moon's aye. Shang.
Aye.
Weisberg.
Aye.
Frost.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Agwal.
Aye.
It passed 7-0, and I'm sure Mr. Dale will not be happy with that, but it passed anyway.
So I do have a couple of first readings. Gary, you pointed out is the technology included. We do have a couple of issues that are coming through with in terms of needing for a network equipment. One is to wire our sports center and some of our other areas to provide enough coverage for use during the classroom, and more really also the need to have additional coverage when we have large exams, whether they be the SAT, a placement exam or other exams the state requires us to hold every year. Those costs are on the relative low side, but the second one is significantly more expensive, and that is our network firewalls. Right now, the throughput for that is very small. Think of it as a choke point. So we are recommending that we right-size those to the size of our district. And total, this project might cost around $930,000. But I do want to note that we have submitted these projects to the FCC as part of our E-rate program, which means that we'll get reimbursed 40% for the cost of those particular items. Doug has reached out to members on the Executive Technology Committee, should be presenting those. We also are in need of a new Transact point of sale system. We've gone through that. Doug is currently conducting his reference checks on both of systems, and will be presenting the board in March the final recommendation. And lastly, we will be bringing to the board in March a renewal of our ombudsman agreement, where we have 5 seats for the students that need an alternative setting. And then, of course, lastly, you can see the Freedom of Information Act requests that we have received, mostly related to just the bids that are held on construction.
I'm just curious, the first read items, are those all in the budget?
The first 3 items, oh, you mean the things that we approved today?
No, the things that.
The first readings, those are being built into the budget for next year. So some of that will be bought this year and some of it will be purchased next year.
On the POS,
Yep.
somebody asked me the other day why we don't have the ability for kids to just have their ID on their phone And use a gun?
Why are you looking at me? I am not the technology
That's what the
director.
kids want.
What have I told you?
That will have this.
It will have it?
It'll have mobile, it'll have
There you go.
faster, like tap to pay things. One of the things that we have found is that that it actually takes less time for cash transactions than it does for our credit card transactions. So we will be adding the more advanced technologies to our repertoire, if you will.
Okay. So they can just, in the wallet, basically their
Correct.
ID will be an option and then they pay.
And not only that, but the register will have the ability to, pull up a picture of the person to help reduce any of kind of the fraudulent uses.
Right, okay. That's good.
Yep.
I like that.
So more to come next month.
Sean,
Yes, David?
when you have when you're living in this category, how much is Doug driving this ship?
Well, Doug is certainly our IT director.
He's the captain.
He's definitely the captain. I'm along more for contracts pricing.
No, I
quotes.
understand, but is Doug intimate with all this?
Yes, and I will say that Doug is very good about forming committees of people that use the technology throughout the building to ensure that we're meeting all of the needs of those individuals that are using the technology.
And he also checks in with Gary regularly.
He does, I just talked to him this week.
Yeah, so we have such a great resource with Gary that we asked him to check in with Gary.
Yep.
That was my next question.
Yep.
Thank you, Gary.
So is there, I think are we at the consent, or did you want to talk about the FOIA?
No, you saw the FOIAs as presented, yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
Any questions for Sean or Eric on the consent agenda? Would you please poll the board?
Wounds, aye. Shang?
Aye.
Weisberg?
Aye.
Good. Frost?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Arwell?
Aye.
Gorson?
Aye.
Okay, so just a couple items for tonight. Obviously we heard a lot of kind of passionate feelings about kind of where we're at with masking. And just as a reminder, as Steve said at the very beginning, we've talked to multiple law firms. We've talked to a lot of people, and if there's one thing that every group that we've talked to agrees on is that we are still subject to the governor's executive order, and that if we were to go mask optional, that would be in violation of that executive order, which comes with all kinds of consequences. What we also know is that the current executive order expires on March 5th. Just given the kind of political chaos that this has caused, I would be shocked if the governor extended it, but I have obviously no inside knowledge of what he's gonna do, but it just would blow my mind if he was going to renew that. So we will keep you posted. Obviously, Steve is intimately involved and has talked to a lot of people as well, and I appreciated, hearing folks kind of passionate about it, but for me, it's as long as the executive order is in place, it seems like we have to follow it, but we'll obviously take direction from you, either way. But what I also wanted just to share, although we had the events of Friday morning, which, again, about 100 people, we've kind of counted up the number of folks that were there. Friday and the weekend was still an awesome day, so Troy, you wanted to share a little bit about kind of how Friday unfolded after the events of the morning, and then even Saturday.
Yeah.
It was a great weekend on campus, so.
As you all probably know, last week was Odyssey, and so just an amazing week of music and art. I had the chance to go to the singer-songwriters on Wednesday night, which was incredible. Brought my whole family. My son hoping to play guitar someday, so that was cool. But on Friday, after we, about at the beginning of fourth hour, I went out and met with the students who were still outside and brought them back to my office, and we had a great conversation and really talked through their concerns. I listened to them. We shared are thinking about it. It was great. A really helpful, thoughtful conversation with that group, and I really appreciated what they had to say. And so I walked out of there and I walked down to the Wood Commons. And so for the whole morning, I had been sort of caught up in the people outside and what was going on. And, you know, I was thinking, oh my gosh, all the stuff that's happened. And as I came down the steps by the Sports Center and started headed into the Wood Commons, I come walking through there and I hear two kids singing at the Copacabana, because they're doing karaoke in the Wood Commons. And I come walking through and there's like an entire room full of people. These girls are singing, everybody's laughing and cheering.
Having the time of their life.
And I'm like, this is amazing. Like the kids are in school and really were enjoying what was happening. Walked upstairs, tape art all over the space, up by the Patriot on the second floor. They'd covered that whole space. And it was just great that kids were still interacting. I had Terry and Steve both, we had the chance to dedicate our 2 new murals this weekend, which were phenomenal. And we talked a little bit about the chess team earlier, and then I think the crown jewel of the whole weekend, we had an event, the night market on Saturday, and there were 600 kids. I don't know that I've ever seen so many faculty and staff at an event to see come out and support kids. It was awesome, and there were wonderful performances, just so much talent, so many different things to explore and experience, and you know, you just walk out of there like walking on a cloud. It was an amazing Saturday afternoon. So the whole weekend was just, it's good to be a Patriot.
If you get a chance, put on your checklist to look at they're both beautiful, the ceiling murals, but the one on the second floor, what is it called?
It's a Mandela.
Mandela or something. Mandela. It's different shape. There's only 2 straight lines and it's all a bunch of different curves. But the thing that's really cool is in all 61, although I think in one place, Jamie, we've said 57.
61 or something.
Well, this is the most updated number. It's 61 right now.
So there's 61 languages spoken in the school at home, and they wrote success for every student in all 61 languages on that. So it is amazing. It really.
And then in partnership with the computer science program, we're actually developing a website where you'll be able to click on each version of success for every student, and we're going to have our students and families say that phrase in their language. So not only will we be able to see, the beautiful language, you'll also be able to hear it in the words of our kids. So it's such a great way to marry science and art together, like computer science and art. It's going to be cool.
The rotunda on the first floor is the adaptation of a photograph of a cell that the kids took the photograph themselves and then they blew it up, and then the artists who we hired to do the actual painting interpreted that photograph. It's not line for line. It's an interpretation of a photograph of a cell, and it's in purples and kind of pale aquas and lavenders. It's just beautiful, and the kids were involved with that from the very beginning. There were children, there were students on the judging committee, and they really voiced what they liked and what they felt was appropriate in it. And they didn't want the same thing on both floors. So the second floor where with the languages is right where the world language area is. So it's an appropriate place to put that. And the one on the first floor is closer to many of the science classrooms. So it's exciting.
You know what's so funny is when you walk through that space, you wonder, how did we never think of this for 40 years?
I was like 40 years of a white wall.
I mean, they were just perfect
just a white
spots
ceiling,
for something. And thank goodness for John and the art department. I mean,
gorgeous.
I don't know why, it took 40 years to figure out that, maybe we should put something up there. So.
Just needed John.
You're gonna make the same comment about a link.
Thank you, baby.
David, we're having trouble with the connection.
The link is breaking.
All right.
Okay.
Wait, and then last thing, Troy and I are leading out our administrator academy for this year. And we do our own kind of in-house administrator academy. And the book that we're focusing on this year is kind of an oldie but a goodie, but it's got a second edition called Leading in a Culture of Change, which we thought, that might be appropriate right now, by Michael Fullen. And so we wanted you to be able to have a copy of that as well. And if you could just send Carol and I your 3-page summary of each chapter by the next board meeting. We'll read those aloud at the end.
Thank you.
Or I have a 3-hour presentation.
Or you have to
I'm
sit and
happy
listen
take
to
you
a
through.
3 to 4 hour presentation from Troy and I, so.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Before you guys adjourn, I just want to say on a serious note, you did a great job handling this weekend, everybody. And I certainly appreciate it. And I just want you to go to bed tonight secure in the knowledge you did the right thing, and you did it well. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate it.
Okay,
I don't have a motion.
can I have?
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Good night.